you could use Groupon to go into, say, Atlanta and figure out how that's working.
Where you go to the store in one of these pop-up stores and you do a little exhibition for 3 days and you get a lot of feedback from people and then you disappear. Because the real albatross of going into business often is, in the old days I used to say it's define, refine, and scale. We don't want to scale before we really refine the offer. And now we have so many tools that we can actually do a lot of really fast iterations. You can even run things in parallel. You can run things in parallel in the same city or different cities.
No, I don't,
it's fantastic.
Just want to make sure that, again, we have microphones here, so feel free to come up and ask questions. We have plenty of time for that. Please do. Don't be shy. But you mentioned all these companies, new media companies. You didn't mention Zynga. Zynga is a company that's just amazing growth, right? And I don't know if it's a misapplication of your concept of mesh, but you've got all these people sharing a game. I mean, literally on Facebook, you're sharing pigs, but they're also sharing guns, on Frontier Build, and you basically, it's a sharing concept, and they're doing this constant iteration, marketing in different places to different types of people, right? So in terms of places where that goes now, right? So we've talked about Groupon. I guess we haven't really talked about Facebook, right?
We haven't really talked about
the
Facebook.
Invitation to join a game. What that means. If you've got a sharing culture and you've got a reputation, what does that mean for sharing, right? If I've got a better reputation than somebody else,
I think that's a whole.
I don't know the number of friends, reputation in this mesh, right? Because I'm not going to be sharing something with somebody who has a bad reputation.
Absolutely. So, with respect to the reputation, I think that eBay, there's a concept that's called whip car or relay rides, for example, and what that is people have created services where instead of you joining Zipcar, which is you're using Zipcar's cars, many of us already have cars, and we only use them 10% of the time in the US. So these services are basically saying, hey, we have all this stuff, we're not using it. Why don't we take our car that we're not using, and when we're not using it, just like a vacation house or whatever, put it into a mesh service, and we can get money. We're actually making money out of the things that we own as opposed to having it sit. Well, one of the things that comes up when you start to do that, as we move from an ownership economy to a share economy, we're going to care a lot more about things like, who am I giving it to, and how come I trust them? So I think the question that you're asking is really fundamental, because reputation and trust and how we allow people to have what level of access to what sorts of shared goods and what moment is really fundamental as we make this shift. And I think that we're going to start to see that as we look at social currencies. And your pig and your flower example from yesterday, I thought was with Zynga is really important, because the other thing that we're starting to see is people are, instead of consuming things in the physical world, you could buy flowers for your girlfriend or the woman that you're dating, because I don't want to pressure you. But you can buy flowers, and it's a virtual currency. You also, the other thing that's interesting to me, and as a woman anyway, is part of the thing about getting flowers at the office is also that it's a public declaration. The flowers come in, and everybody comes over, not everybody, just all the women, to see, and so when you do it in a social forum like that, where there's also, a Farmville game going on or something else, it has the same impact. So to me, that's a really interesting thing of what sorts of things from social status get conserved.
Well, the interesting thing is it has more impact, right? Because it's not just the chance encounter with a few office colleagues.
You're right.
Or your Facebook friends.
You're right. It's like the badge in Foursquare or any of those sorts of things.
Mobile. So we haven't talked about just this on.
I avoided your question on Facebook, I realized, but carry on.
Well, if you want to go to Facebook, we can come back to it. But mobile's interesting because what it does is it lets us do sharing in ways that we've never done before. We've got the smartphone, and we can input all this data all the time. And what are the big companies that are being challenged by this, right? Because you've got this mesh of people supplying data, potentially undermining ways to establish business.
Absolutely.
And helping out perhaps younger businesses.
I think that the question that Matt just asked was really fundamental. That one of the things that happens in the mesh is data goes exponentially. That when you have an interaction with a customer and you sell something one time, you have that data, you have that transaction information, you know something about them. But when you start to form, partnerships, and when you start to participate in a shared economy, you're seeing that person. If you imagine like a bike share or a car share, you're seeing that interaction. Instead of it being once every 4 years, it might be going to 40 times in a month. The second thing is with partners that expands. When you think about mobile, the power of mobile, like right now, all the apps that exist on our various phones allow, you can basically make a reservation, pre-order food, and arrive to the restaurant. You can make a reservation on a zip car, arrive, and unlock the car and get in. There's no need to interact with the people have been, that were sort of the gatekeeper as we were. I think that also what we're starting to see is very similar things. For example, hotels are starting to look at where they form partnerships and they can have spillover access into other hotels with same reservation systems, or that the apps that are running on the phone allow you to sit, in a cafe and say, oh God, it snowed in New York and I'm stuck. Now I have to stay another night and my hotel's full. So you're sitting there and basically, the app will actually allow you to bypass reception and go straight to the room and unlock the door and go in. The technologies are conspiring to make really interesting things happen at that level. But I also think that the mobile phone is won over as the really important device because, it's with us and it knows where we are and it locates us in time and space, and there's all these other things moving around that are, physical things that if we could connect with, it really takes the friction out of ownership. And those models, the sharing models, are going to be really, really interesting.
I want to go to Facebook. But again, we're actually, this is going really quickly. We had 20 minutes and now we've got 2 minutes left. Any questions, please come up. Take at least one. Failing that, let's go to Facebook.
Really? No? People have questions?
Maybe they'll walk up to us as we, we'll take a question at the end of this Facebook.
Facebook, what's there to say? I think Facebook has changed in many ways everything. And Google, as an example, while Google is, it's interesting to look at Yahoo, Google, and Facebook as 3 generations.
Yeah. Well, you've got this movie, I think it's Catfish, which I haven't seen yet, but I've heard about it. Just you're taking your everyday life experiences as shared on Facebook and actually, or YouTube or whatever, right. In sharing these experiences and then putting them online in new ways or into the form of a movie, right?
Which begs a lot of questions also, obviously privacy, but also the whole issue of open and standards and, which I'm not going to answer here, but I think also...
Well, it's on the record, right? So VoiceBase is recording everything you say and it's going to be searchable.
That's right.
Forever. So whatever you say now, watch out. It's being shared with everybody here.
Correct. But I also think that the spirit, there's something, I'll just make a nostalgic sentence, which is, in the spirit of how we thought we were kind of founding the internet, various websites and applications and things, and it's continued pretty much for the most part all along, there's a spirit of generosity. In the first wave of the internet, what we shared were digital products because that's what was possible. Mobile and Facebook have changed that dramatically. And so that's why I'm saying we're at the beginning of some whole new era. The other thing I think that's really important is that I'm not just talking about Silicon Valley, and I'm not just talking about California, and I'm not just talking about the United States. It's the world. That things are happening in the world in the way that sharing is driving the bus that I think would astound you, though you may be more aware of these things than I am, and I've been trying to stay on top of them for a couple of years. But it's really impressive if you think about the fundamentals of the model are shifting. We really are at the very beginning of something phenomenal and something that's going to be mind-boggling different in terms of how we think about business strategies of going to market, building brands, what kinds of people we need on our team, what's a team, where we locate ourselves. Like, there was a strategy for building clusters. Silicon Valley is a cluster, Hollywood is a cluster, Napa is a cluster, because there's all these physical assets that are, and people and money that are accumulated to drive something fundamental. But do we need those as we look at the way that we're moving right now and the tools we have for finding each other and being in touch and finding things? I don't know.
Well, Lisa, we're out of time, unfortunately.